Hello and welcome back to After Whistle Sports Podcast. I know we've taken a little bit of an extended break, but in the month of March, there's a lot of stuff going on. NFL draft. We're going to get our college basketball March Madness content offloaded as well. So be on the lookout for that. But today, for this episode, I'm joined by Derek, and we are going to be doing a full first round NFL mock draft for the upcoming 2023 draft. And we're doing this after the combine, so we have a lot more information on the prospects. There's been a lot of talk about what teams are going to do. And at least for me, this is a very big draft because the Chicago Bears are in prime position to reshape their roster with the number one overall pick. And so let's just get started right away with that. The Bears are on the clock. And as we're talking through this, we've also have a draft posted up. And so be on the lookout. We might post our final draft on our Twitter. So if you're not following our Twitter at After Whistle Sports, definitely check it out. We're very
Yes.
active on there. Um, let's just get right into it. Chicago Bears on the clock, number one overall pick. Now, no one believes that the Bears will be drafting a player at this pick. This is going to be a quarterback, and the Bears don't need a quarterback with Justin Fields. And so there's a few teams that we've talked about that have been kind of associated with this pick. First, the Indianapolis Colts have been long associated. They're a pick number 4. They have pick number 35 in the second round, and they have solid draft capital in 2024 and 2025. So, Derek, what are the pros you think with the Colts here? And then maybe if you can give me another team that could possibly want to move up for this pick.
Yeah, absolutely. The Colts are a great trade partner. I mean, they've got the fourth overall pick, so even if the Bears trade down, they can still grab an elite prospect. I guess with the Jalen Carter news, maybe it's not as guaranteed that they'll get someone elite, but certainly a great trade piece. They've also got a ton of future picks that the Bears would absolutely love to grab. I guess on a couple of other teams, Carolina definitely looking to trade up. They got a great defense, and their offense looks pretty ascendant, so they'd love to grab a quarterback, and same with Houston. So those are a couple of teams that would definitely want to trade up.
Now, I've also heard a lot of reports coming out recently that the Bears are looking to trade. If they were to trade with Houston, who is setting up the number 2 pick, then that trade would be done maybe even in the next few weeks. So you trade down to number 2. Houston gets their top quarterback in the draft, and the Bears end up with picks from Houston and the ability to trade down further in the draft come draft night. Um, do you think that this is the likely option for the Bears? And if so, what do you think the Bears can get from Houston to only move down one pick?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I guess the question, if you're a Bears fan or if you're a Bears GM, is do you want that Will Anderson type guy, or do you want more first round picks and more future compensation to create a more well-rounded and better team in the long run? And I'd say you want that second option. You want a better team because you can compete further into the future. So just looking at what the Bears can trade down for, just going down to 2, I guess you could grab 33. I don't know if you can grab 12. I think that's like a big question. I think that's like the best case scenario for a lot of Bears fans, but it's something that's definitely a big question.
Now, when I look at this trade, and again, we're going to focus in, I think, on the Texans to trade up first because from multiple reports, that's what we've been hearing. Not sure that's a smoke screen, but that is what we're hearing. But number 2, for sure. And now the question is, would the Bears prefer that pick 33, which is an early second? That's a great pick, right? Or would they maybe try to get one of the 2024 first round picks that Houston owns? Because they also own the Cleveland first round pick. I don't think the Cleveland first round pick by itself would be enough for Houston to move up again, even though it's only one spot. That's the difference between getting your number one quarterback in the draft, or maybe you run the risk of the Colts trading up and now your number one quarterback who you really wanted is on your division rival. And so I think what could happen here, and I don't think I've seen this thrown around that much, is I could see number 2, 65, and the Texans 2024 first round pick. I think
Wow.
that's a lot of value, but um, I've seen that the Bears would want to get 3 first round picks, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. But To me, this seems pretty fair for what you're getting. Maybe the Bears have to toss in a 2024 third or something like that to make it work. But what do you think about this trade?
Yeah, that's definitely rich. And I think that's definitely a more fair trade with the Bears giving back that third because that Texans pick is most certainly going to be very valuable. But yeah, I like that trade.
All right, we're going to put this trade through, which means that the Texans are on the clock. They've officially jumped all the other teams, Colts, Panthers, Raiders, in getting the quarterback of their choice. I firmly believe that that is Bryce Young. We've heard a lot about other quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson, who was an animal at the combine, ran a 4.44, set the quarterback records for long jump, broad jump. I thought he did actually very well in throwing drills as well. A lot of that talk though was towards CJ Stroud, who just looked like a pro in all of those throwing drills, which I don't take as much stock in, but kind of aligns with what you see on tape. But this is Bryce Young. I know he only measured in at 5'10, which would be very small, but he is bigger than Kyler Murray. So we know it can work somewhat. Um, and I just think his processing, the intangibles there is too much to pass up here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Young is definitely the first quarterback off the board.
Great. So it's Bryce Young off the board. So now Chicago's at the number 2 pick. But at this point, I think they also try to trade this one down. Again, I believe that the first 3 picks, and we'll get into this later, I believe the first 3 picks will be quarterbacks. I believe that there are 3 elite quarterbacks in this class, maybe 4. So the question is, who do you trade back with now? And in my opinion, I think the Indianapolis Colts have a guy they really want. And I think it's CJ Stroud.
Okay. No, I
Now,
like that.
the question is, will the Colts want to trade up for Stroud? They're sitting there at 4. I think they would because to me, Colts need a quarterback. They have a solid team. They're not going after Lamar. They're not going after Rodgers in free agency. And I think Stroud is just perfect for that team. They loved him at the combine, loved his interview. This is going to be Stroud. And so when you're creating this trade here, Bears obviously giving up number 2, Colts giving up number 4. And now this is interesting here because it's not just one pick to move up. This is 2 picks. Everything I've seen is going to be at least a 2024 first from the Colts, which could be a really strong pick as well. And I believe they give up 35. So a
And okay.
second and a 2024 first to move up 2 spots. Now, do you think the Bears could get more?
I think it's questionable. I mean, I think it just depends on how much the Colts fall in love with their guy. And if, like you said, they really love Stroud, I could see them throwing in another third round pick maybe. But I think the margins are very thin, and this seems like a fair trade.
Perfect. So now we put the trade through. Colts are on the clock. I've stated my case for CJ Stroud here. Do you think they could possibly go Richardson?
Richardson would be really, really fun for the Colts. I imagine like a Jonathan Taylor Richardson offense. But I mean, given the way that the Colts have played the quarterback position the past couple of years, I think they go with a safer option for sure in CJ Stroud.
And I think he's going to be a great pro as well. I mean, I just saw in a recent mock draft that they had him going above Bryce Young, which and they had the Colts trading up to number 1 to draft him.
Damn.
And so take that as you will. Obviously, some of these people who make the more locked in mock draft video, like they obviously have some information. And from what I've heard, CJ Stroud is going to be the guy in the Colts. So we'll see where that takes you. But Cardinals are on the clock. Now, this is another team. You still have the 2 top defenders in the draft, but you also have Anthony Richardson there. And I hate to do this because this would be so weird to have 3 traded picks in the first round, but I think Oakland tries to jump up here for Richardson or the Panthers. One of those 2.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, but I mean, I just can't see Arizona passing up Will Anderson. I mean, it just seems like a natural pick at this point.
Yeah, I think it would depend on the offer. Will Anderson is maybe the best player in the entire draft, and for them to get him at 3 is would do wonders for their team. Their team's terrible. Yeah, I like that pick as well, Anderson there. Do we have any of his? He didn't test at the combine, did he?
I don't think so. Let's see.
He's probably one of those guys who we'll see him at the pro day, at the Alabama pro day. I don't believe he tested in all the drills at the combine.
So he did some of the drills, ran a 4.6, uh, measured him pretty well.
Yeah,
But
that's good enough for me. All right, Will Anderson taking off the board now. Chicago at pick 4. I mean, do they trade down again?
yeah, I think at this point, someone wants
I think they do
Richardson.
because you know what? We're looking at 3 teams here. We got the Detroit Lions, probably the least likely to draft a quarterback. But then again, are they content with Goff? Or if they really fall in love with a guy like Richardson in that explosive offense, do they go with him? Looking at the Raiders, who we know need a quarterback. And then we're looking at the Panthers, who absolutely need a quarterback. And so I think the Panthers are going to try to jump to get Richardson. He's been linked to that team a little bit as well. Where are the Panthers? Now, when we think about what options are there um, for what the Bears could get, they'd obviously trade down to pick 9. Um, and this is interesting because this is 5 spots. So each time you trade down for more spots, you can get better value. It's just the way it works. So I think they're at least getting a 2024 first, which
Mhm.
could be a great pick. I think they're getting 39. And could they be getting a 2024 second as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's what it's going to be.
I mean, that is a huge jump. So
Yeah. I mean, heck, maybe you would even get 2025 first
instead of that second,
instead of that second.
I could see that as well.
All right, let's force it through because we're not actually running through second round here. But Carolina trades with the Bears again. Bears trade down for the 3rd time in the draft. Amazing work by Ryan Poles. Uh, Carolina on the clock. Richardson to me is their guy. Freak
Yep.
athlete. His athlete score was the highest we've seen at the position like ever. Very raw prospect. Issues with accuracy. Only threw 55% completion percentage his last year at Florida. But he's a raw prospect, and I think Carolina needs someone who. I mean, they had Baker. They've had Darnold. They need someone who they can put all the eggs in one basket, and this is a guy to do it with.
The next Cam Newton, maybe.
Maybe. Now we got the Seahawks on the clock. A lot of great options here because we had all those quarterbacks go off the board. Uh, I can definitely see him just maybe Jalen Carter. Depends on his legal issues. I mean, do we feel comfortable? Because if he's on the board, they'll draft Jalen Carter. Or if he's draftable, I think you have to draft him, right?
Yeah, but we have seen, people fall out of the top for less, like Laramie Tunzel, uh,
Yeah,
with the
that's true.
bong. I think though, like if he has no legal troubles, if he's telling the truth or whatever, certainly the best option available. I mean, it's really dependent.
I kind of want to draft him there just because it's a fairly easy mock and we don't really know what to do with him.
Yeah, I'm done with that.
So we're gonna draft Jalen Carter there. Detroit Lions on the clock. We know they need cornerback. All
Yep.
the talk has been about what cornerback is Detroit going to get. But I also think that they could look at a defensive lineman or an edge rusher if they really like him.
Hmm.
Some of these guys on the board, I think Lucas Van Ness is a guy who has moved up a lot due to the combine. Uh, I mean, you look at a guy like Brian Bresee, who I believe we mocked to Detroit at a later pick in the last mock. Nolan Smith, he had a great combine, but again, I think here they go cornerback and Christian Gonzalez to me was one of the biggest risers from the draft combine. Ran very
Absolutely.
smooth in all the field work. He was great on tape. He's got size, speed, ball skills. I think Gonzalez is the best cornerback, and I think he'd really fit what Detroit wants to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 4.38 40 is incredible. 41.5-inch vertical is just ridiculous for a cornerback. He's got all the athleticism. Yeah, I think between him and Joey Porter, I mean, choose your cornerback, but Gonzalez is a great choice here.
So we'll get Gonzalez there. Now Oakland on the clock. Um,
This
And
just
I
feels
think,
like Will Levis.
yeah,
Like,
no, they really lucked out because listen, they didn't have to trade up for their guy. I think their guy was Will Levis all along. You know, he's got the explosive arm. We all know how the Raiders like to create big plays,
yep.
kind of surround him with speed. And, you know, with Devontae Adams kind of aging, but still producing at an elite level, I think you want to get a guy who can distribute the ball downfield. I mean, I think Levis is good here. There's been a lot of talk about is he overrated? He didn't have such a great season statistically last year at Kentucky, but I mean, I believe he's the guy there. And I'm really starting to become more of a Will Levis fan the more I watch him. Had a great throwing session at the combine. And I think a lot of his problems in production in college came from the fact that he had a bad offensive line and just wasn't surrounded by that many weapons, which won't be the case in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, I think he just belongs in a Raiders uniform. I don't know why. He just looks good.
He feels like a Raiders quarterback here.
Definitely.
Okay, now we got the Atlanta Falcons on the clock. One thing to note here is that they did say that they are not going to be pursuing Lamar Jackson in free agency, which
Ridiculous.
is for we could this could be a whole episode talking about the Lamar Jackson situation. But I don't believe they go pick a quarterback here, just because at this point, unless they trade up, you really can't do much. But there are really good players on the board, and one of those guys is Tyree Wilson, who I know is one of the more polarizing prospects in this draft. Amazing just size. He's 6'6, 275, 86-inch wingspan, which is ginormous. He didn't test at the combine, so there are some concerns there, but uh, he's a very smooth prospect. Now, he isn't the most polished, and he didn't have the best production in the Big 12, which is concerning to some, but he has the frame needed. I believe he's good against the run. His pass rush could use work, but he's to me he's a great prospect. And I'm curious to see how he does testing wise in his pro day. To me, that'll make a big difference.
Yep, yep, for sure.
But do we like that pick there, or would we rather go with a guy like Kalijah Cansey, the defensive lineman out of Pitt, who had an amazing combine?
Ooh. I think we still go Tyree Wilson here. I think he's consensus above. Maybe like, yeah, maybe like Nolan Smith, but nah, maybe that's even too rich.
No, I mean I've heard Nolan Smith mocked here too, and we know how the Falcons love those Georgia guys. Um, yeah, I think we go Tyree Wilson here.
Yep.
Okay, okay, now we have Chicago on the clock.
Yeah, so Chicago, a very wide, a lot of options here at number 9. I've heard a lot of people wishing for JSN here at number 9, and I'm not sure if that's the best option. People point to the Burrow Chase combo, but that's not exactly what Justin Fields and JSN had. They only had, like 10 snaps together. I think that Chicago probably goes tackle here. There's a great amount of great just tackles in this draft class, and I think Chicago needs to pick one up to fortify their offensive line. So I think a great pick here would be Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. Um, Someone to set up their offensive line for the future, protect their quarterback of the future, and Justin Fields. Just generally a great pick.
You know, I agree, and I actually read recently that I believe Paris Johnson has interviewed with 3 teams so far. It's like the Bears, Eagles, Steelers, and again, Paris Johnson. They need offensive line help. Have heard that they can go out in free agency and get a guy, but I mean, it's always better to draft a stud in the draft. Um, but I could see Jackson Smith and Jigba being the option here, giving Justin Fields some help. So either of those guys, I think, would be really solid options. But I agree with you. Paris Johnson has probably the most athletic upside as a tackle in this draft. I think he's slightly overrated after kind of watching his film a little bit more. Still needs a lot more work in terms of kind of cleaning up his technique. There were situations where he wasn't the best in pass protection, but great athlete, great prospect. I'm definitely okay with them beefing up the O line here.
Yeah.
Now, the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is a pick where, I mean, there's no consensus. They can go a lot of different ways here. I think personally, people aren't talking about this, but I think they could trade down from this pick. Um, Now, this seems to be a place where we've seen in the past few drafts with how much wide receiver is being valued. And I think if the Bears go wide receiver at 9, I think another team gets a little bit nervous and really wants to get their top wide receiver, whether that's Quentin Johnson, whether that's, I mean, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. I think a team could get really antsy and try to try to trade up to get him. And again, the Eagles, if I were the Eagles, I would trade down for this pick because I still
Mhm.
think a lot of the great players are available, and you're not pressing for any position here. So without them trading it, I mean, they could go wide receiver, um, just kind of give Jalen Hurts more help. I think personally they want to go defensive line here. Javon Hargraves is a free agent, probably going to leave the Eagles. And I think Elijah Cansey, the defensive lineman, defensive tackle out of Pitt, is one of the best players in this draft. Tested extremely well at the combine for his size. I believe he only clocked in at or weighed in at 280, if I'm correct, which is on the smaller side for a three technique. Um, but at the same time, he's got an elite athleticism, great player on tape, and I think he kind of fills a hole that the Eagles might have after free agency.
Yeah, I like that pick for sure. I see a lot of people mocking a wide receiver to the Eagles, but I'm not sure. They've got Devonta Smith, obviously, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert. Seems like they have a ton of weapons for Hurts already. So I think that fortifying the defensive side is probably a better option. I've also seen Bijan to the Eagles. I don't know, might be too high to take him, but obviously he's like a top 5 talent in this class. So
Yeah, I know if Jack was on here, he would really want Bijan to the Eagles. I don't see it. I don't think that I think that would sort of be a waste of a pick, in my opinion, when you have a guy like Cansey on the board, who can really help fortify your defense, kind of keep it at that Super Bowl level. Next up, the Titans on the clock. Now, some news with the Titans. Derrick Henry is being shopped around for possible trade situations. And we talked about Bijan. I mean, could the Titans be a landing spot with him? The old maybe trade away the vet and just reload with the younger guy on a rookie contract.
that would be insane. And it seems like it's a variation of what they tried to do last year with AJ Brown, which failed miserably. But yeah, I could I could see them maybe going after Bijan. I think they have more pressing needs though. For sure. I guess like with their offensive line, they definitely need some wide receiver help. I think they have like one solid receiver in Treylon Burks, but nothing really past that.
Yeah,
So
I think Njigba would be a really solid pick here.
yeah, that would be amazing.
And he's on the board. He's my number one wide receiver in the draft class by a pretty solid margin. And the Titans really need pass catchers. Like they're in dire. Like they have a very good team. Like they have a playoff caliber team in a weak AFC South. They just after trading AJ Brown, they have nothing vertically, and so I'm definitely okay with them taking a Jigba here.
I like that.
Now we have the Texans on the clock, and I think they're going to be very upset that Njigba went before them, because they're obviously also in the need for wide receivers. But they could do a couple of things here. Now I see Lucas Van Ness is still on the board, and he's been rising up a lot. I've heard that he's maybe going to be a top 10 pick lock. He's risen off draft boards that much. Big edge rusher out of Iowa, tested really well. I think this could be a very good pick for the Texans here. But
Yeah, I like
I
that
want to hear
too.
other opinions as well.
For sure. Obviously, you'd like a wide receiver. When your wide receiver one is Brandon Cooks and he's unhappy with his playing time, and your second is Nico Collins. Like what are you really doing? You want like a true alpha. So I think Quentin Johnston could also be a great pick here. Sort of how like the Bengals set up Joe Burrow with T. Higgins. Getting that quarterback to wide receiver connection in the first season is definitely something that teams should be valuing more often. So Quentin Johnson and Bryce Young would definitely be a great combination here.
Okay, so I guess few ways, few different ways they can go. I think me personally, I just don't have Johnston rated that highly. I don't have a top 15 grade on him, so I wouldn't feel comfortable drafting him in that range. But I definitely see what you're saying, and honestly, the more I think about it, I think that's what the Texans are going to do, kind of get that connection a little bit more. So definitely cool mocking Quentin Johnson to the Texans here at 12.
Yeah, I don't think he's a great prospect either, but I think it's something teams want to do.
Now, the New York Jets are on the clock. Other news, they've been linked heavily to Aaron Rodgers out of free agency. We'll see if Rodgers retires or goes to the Jets or stays in Green Bay. I think for the sake of this, we could pretend like maybe Rodgers is on the Jets because I do think that will change what they do in the draft. And I mean, I think if Rodgers goes to the Jets, that offense would be pretty stellar with Brees Hall. They have wide receivers. They got weapons there. I could definitely see him going defense here. And if you look at the defensive prospects, there's still a lot of good ones on the board. Again, Lucas Van Ness, I think he's too good to pass up at this spot because the Patriots would love to draft him after them at 14.
Yeah, I
But
wonder why. But yeah, Lucas Van Ness is a great option here. He's Hercules, right? Performed great at the
yeah,
combine. I love that pick.
nice. Patriots are on the clock. We originally mocked Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama there, but he tested very poorly at the combine. Was honestly very disappointed in the way he tested. Again, he was never supposed to be the most athletic guy. He was just a smart nickelback, but I don't think you draft a nickel corner this high unless they are straight locked down. I don't really know if that's Brian Branch here. I like Peter Skoronsky. Um, Tackle on Northwestern, very short wingspan, so many people assume he's just going to move inside as a guard. But that's great because the Patriots also need a guard. So
Yeah.
you can go a few different ways here. I like Skoronsky. You can also see him going Devin Witherspoon just because he's the best player available. We've seen the Patriots just take best player available.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, we've also seen the Patriots just pick some random guy that no one was expecting. But I like the Skoronski pick for sure. Just
nice.
fortifying that
Let's
offensive
mark
line.
him there. Green Bay on the clock. Now, this pick has been um, Michael Mayer out of tight end on Notre Dame for so long. I think every every draft has him there, but I think this is someone else. I think this is Nolan Smith, edge rusher out of Georgia. The Packers defense has been really elite. Not talked about as enough recently, but they do have a lot of players who might not be in their long term plans. I think if you put Smith across from Rashawn Gary, you can have a really scary edge rushing duo. And Nolan Smith, I mean, he ran a 4.39. I mean, measured in at I think 6'6" or 6'3", 235. Great prospect. I mean, Green Bay loves drafting Georgia defensive linemen. We know that. So I think this is Nolan Smith, but I could also see him going Michael Mayer. Could also see him going Will McDonald if they want another edge rusher who they like better. They can go a lot of different ways here. But to me, that would be the pick.
Yep, I like that too. Um, and beyond Mayer, I think there's a lot of great tight end prospects. You
Yeah.
know, Darnell Washington flying up the boards. But yeah, there's a ton of options.
We got the Washington Commanders on the clock. Um, Not quite sure what they could do here. They need a lot of just athletes in general. Uh, Now, one guy who I've heard is going to rise up a lot of draft boards is Anton Harrison, tackle out of Oklahoma. Heard from a few sources that I mean some teams have him as their number one tackle, and I think for him to still be on the board this late is something that would be a great pickup. Again, Devin Witherspoon is still on the board as well, so I'm okay with either of those guys. What is your opinion on this?
Um, yeah, I mean the Commanders they need a ton of help, right? And I think just getting like a tackle is for sure a good option, especially one in Anton Harrison. 4.98 40 is really fast for that large of a man. Really great to see his athleticism. So I like the Anton Harrison pick.
Steelers on the clock. They really need a tackle, but I think they could also go cornerback. And
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of those stories where they end up drafting Joey Porter Jr. And you see like the draft day, it's like, oh, his dad played the Steelers. To me, this would work out too perfectly.
Yeah, I
He
like
would still
that
be
for
on the
sure.
board.
That legacy pick.
Yeah,
I like it.
legacy pick. We've seen that happen before too. So we got Joey Porter going there, and Detroit Lions at pick number 18. This is gotta be Witherspoon. Or no, wait, they drafted Gonzalez in the first. So wait, this won't be a cornerback. Um, I
I
think
mean,
this
at
is
this
going to be
point,
defensive line, either Murphy or Brissy. Will McDonald they can go with. Um, Felix and Odike Uzama could be someone they go with. BJ Ojolari, I love. Man, there are a lot of good prospects in this draft. Jack
I think
Campbell they can go with.
I've heard a lot of noise about Bijan to the Lions.
Bijan to the Lions.
Maybe at this point where there's not a clear number one guy, not a clear best player available they can get, they just take Bijan and create an insane offense with ridiculous speed and elusiveness. I think that that would be a great strategy.
You know what? Let's run it. Let's put B. Let's not Bijan to the Lions.
I like it.
I like it a lot too. Now Tampa Bay on the clock. Need a few things here. They really need a guard, and I think this is where we might see our first interior offensive lineman off the board. Osiris Torrance, out of Florida, originally played at, I believe, Georgia Southern. No, somewhere in the Sun Belt, but he was amazing in the SEC. One of the best guard prospects we've seen in recent years. Tested very well. Great footwork, great strength, can play center as well. I think this is a good pick here, and this is probably right around where he's going to be mocked.
Yeah, I like that. Buccaneers have a ton of holes.
Yep. We got Seattle on the clock once again. I think Miles Murphy has dropped too much. Now, so we haven't drafted Jalen Carter. Yeah, I think this is Miles Murphy. Get some help on the edge. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's that's such a Seahawks draft. Basically, just having their picks, drafting the best player available, and having two amazing athletes join their defense.
Mhm.
Now we got the Chargers on the clock, and I think they go wide receiver here. This is where it gets really difficult because we still have guys like Zay Flowers on the board, who I think had a very underrated combine, but isn't at the level of Njigba. We have Jordan Addison, who weighed in really small. A lot of questions about whether he can hold up and beat man coverage in the NFL. Josh Downs, also size problems. Uh, but then there are also just some solid players still left on the board. To me, Devin Witherspoon has fallen way too much, and if a team hasn't traded up by now to get him, he's going to be off the board at this pick.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with the Chargers just drafting Witherspoon.
Yeah. I'm cool with that as well. I think in the real draft, they're definitely going to take a receiver, but in this case, Devin Witherspoon definitely has fallen too far.
Yeah. Baltimore Ravens on the clock. The team that is disrespecting Lamar Jackson. Um, and we know how much the Ravens love cornerbacks. I feel like if they had three picks in the first round, they'd run with three cornerbacks. It's just a part of who they are. I don't think they go wide receiver here, even though it's definitely a glaring issue. One guy I really like who had an amazing combine, Deontay Banks out of Maryland. Believe ran the second fastest combine. Very good. That's my scouting report on him. But another guy, Emmanuel Forbes, is another cornerback who is a little bit undersized, but has been rising up draft boards. Great athleticism as well. Do you think they go cornerback here, or somewhere, or do they grab a wide receiver, go a completely different direction?
Yeah, I think it's definitely between corner and receiver. I'd lean towards receiver. I mean, they just need help in that area for sure. And they've needed help for the past like 10 years. But I could totally see them going Deontay Banks. Yeah, it seems like a very like Ravens, like defend the house type pick.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think this is so bad. I think they pick Banks because I don't think these teams have Flowers or Addison that highly ranked. And that's what I'm trying to say. And I know that the positional value, like these wide receivers, have more value because once they get to free agency or once they get to their second contract, they're super expensive to keep. But at the same time, like I don't think this is a very strong wide receiver class in general. And so I definitely see a situation where you have Johnston go, you have Njigba go, and then you have a little bit of a waiting game. And maybe there's a run on wide receivers with teams trading up to get their guy. But in this case, I guess we're projecting that doesn't happen. So I think it's Banks or cornerback. And I just love the Ravens not drafting wide receiver. Perfect. Now we got the Minnesota Vikings on the clock. A few options they can go with. I really like Will McDonald out of Iowa State. Um, they would bolster up the defensive line. Definitely see this as a solid pick for them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that.
At the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock, they need a bunch of different pieces here, but they're surprisingly kind of building. They have a great young core with Trevor Lawrence, ETN, solid defense. I think this is another defensive pick. Just looking on the board, there's a lot of great players still available. Um, I think, ooh, this is really tough because there's still a lot of great players. I like, I mean, maybe this is Brissy or Brian Branch. This could also be, I like BJ Ojolari a ton out of LSU. I think some teams really gonna like him. Then I can also see Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State, and that kind of address their defensive back need as well.
Yeah, I mean, ton of great options. I think they probably address the line or the like offensive line or defensive line, whether that be, Brian Bresee. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Bresee is a good pick here. He's fallen quite a bit.
All right, let's go Brian Bresee, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. We got New York Giants on the clock. I think this is wide receiver here. Um, my favorite prospect, one of my favorite prospects in the draft, Zay Flowers, is I mean he's just a professional when you put him on film. Great player, can run routes from all different parts of the offense, can operate in the slot, can operate outside. 5'10", 172, a little bit small, and also a little bit old, but he had great production in college. Tested very well at the combine. I like this pick. I'm really fading Jordan Addison. I'm very scared about how he's gonna hold up in press man coverage. I think he's honestly even too small to play. So I guess if he goes
Yeah.
off, then you can clip this. But I mean, I'm not buying Addison personally.
Yeah, I mean, I like Zay Flowers here too. Before the combine, went up to 183, so put on 10 pounds and still ran a 4.42, which is faster than Addison. So has those athletic intangibles. But I wouldn't just write off Addison. I mean, obviously he won the Blitnikoff and he's got a ton of talent, route running and otherwise.
Yeah. Now Dallas Cowboys on the clock. Um, go a few different ways here. I like Ojolari. I think he'd be a great pick. Kind of pair him with Micah Parsons, kind of bolster up that defense. He can, I mean, he might be a little bit undersized when you look at uh, as like a pure like defensive end in a 4-3 system, but they could also use him kind of as a linebacker. I would personally really like to see him on the Cowboys. I think he'd be a great fit, but there are also a lot of really good prospects still on the board.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a ton. Do you think Brian Branch falls this far?
I
I mean,
think
I know he
teams,
tested pretty bad.
yeah, no, I think he was a guy who teams really were interested in seeing what he can do because he needs to be in a very specific system. Like he needs to be in a system that's going to utilize a nickel cornerback slash safety in that hybrid role. Because he's someone you can match up on a tight end. Uh, but I think teams might be scared by the fact that he's not an athletic monster. His size isn't great. I mean, he's a solid hitter, very physical player, smart player. I just don't know if a team doesn't have a plan for him, if they're going to want to spend that high of draft capital.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But I mean, they could definitely draft Branch here. Like the Cowboys would be a team who would pair him maybe with Trevon Diggs, kind of have a little bit like an all or nothing defensive backfield. Actually, I kind of like that. And then we know Jerry Jones loves Alabama guys, so
Okay. Yeah.
let's mark him there. Now Buffalo Bills on the clock. Uh, could go a few different ways here. I still like Broderick Jones, the tackle out of Georgia, and Dewan Jones, tackle out of Ohio State. I think this might be too far for them in general.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I like Broderick too. DeWand, obviously, a tank, physical marvel, but Broderick's probably better at this point.
Oh, I was just about to say the opposite. I think they would go
Oh,
Dewan here.
okay.
Um, I think Dewan Jones goes higher in the draft than Broderick Jones. That's my hot take.
Interesting.
Amazing size, tested fairly well for his size at the combine. Pretty raw prospect, but he's honestly not that bad. Like compared to the other tackles who we've mocked beforehand, I think he's right up there with those guys.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Nice. Almost at the end of the first round, we got the Bengals up on the clock. They also need a tackle. I think this is Broderick Jones. I
Yep.
mean, maybe this go the opposite. I think they want Dewan Jones. Like that might be their preference in that position, but obviously we just mocked him to the Bills to take him. So we got the Saints on the clock. They just ended up signing Derek Carr. In that case, I think they might want to get him some offensive help. They do have a hole at tight end, I believe. Was it Juwan Johnson's the guy there right now?
Yep. I mean, they do have Taysom Hill, but
Yeah, but I don't think he's an actual tight end. We saw what Derek Carr could do with Darren Waller in Oakland. I think Michael Mayer. This is probably where he should go.
I like that.
Now we got the Super Bowl runner-ups, Eagles on the clock once again, and they luck out just completely because there's still Jordan Addison on the board here. I mean, he's gonna be gone by this point. I just didn't like him, so we just didn't mock him anywhere. But if he's on the
Yeah.
board, like the Eagles will draft him. So last pick, we got the Kansas City Chiefs. Go a few different ways here. I think they go. I mean, I love BJ Ojolari. I love Josh Downs. Uh, I like Cam Smith, Emmanuel Forbes, Jack Campbell. A lot of good players here. I mean, do they go Jahmyr Gibbs?
That would be insane for that offense. Yeah.
That'd be pretty nuts, right? That'll be fun.
Yeah.
I want to
I'm
vote Jahmyr
wondering.
Gibbs there.
Okay, okay. That's fair.
Well, no, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say maybe Dalton Kincaid. I mean,
Mm,
Travis Kelce's getting pretty old. Um, find a replacement for him, but they've also got like Noah Gray.
yeah,
So I like I like Jahmyr Gibbs. That'd be an electric offense.
nice. Put him there. And there it is, guys. The 1.01 After Whistle Sports mock draft. Definitely a lot of fun. Very excited for the real draft coming up. Maybe we'll do another episode or we'll discuss some news and such. But yeah, Derek, thanks for joining. This was really cool experiment. I mean, honestly, we're probably gonna get these all wrong, but that's the fun of it. Again, stay tuned for later this month. We'll be doing our official After Whistle Sports March Madness bracket challenge. Probably the most fun episode we do every year. Last year we had a very good bracket, so if you want to win your league, you know where to find us. But check out our Twitter if you haven't already. We post a lot of content on there at After Whistle Sports. And yeah, thanks for listening.
All right, take care.